rescuers carefully worked around Brandon, removing rocks and dirt by hand. Every move was deliberate, as they didn't want to cause further injury or risk a collapse. His body was numb with cold, his broken legs screaming with every slight shift in position. The dust had caked his throat, making it impossible to cry out. Time felt like it had slowed to a crawl, and he drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain and hypothermia waging war on his body. Finally, after hours of painstaking effort, the rescuers reached him. They were stunned when they found him alive. By all accounts, Brandon should have been dead, crushed, suffocated or succumbed to his injuries long ago, but there he was, battered and broken, but breathing. The final stage of the rescue involved securing him with ropes carefully. They maneuvered a harness around his limp body, ensuring that his broken leg was immobilized. The rescuers worked methodically, pulling him out slowly to avoid jarring his injuries. At last, after nearly 12 excruciating hours, Brandon was lifted out of the pit. The sight of him was sobering. His leg was grotesquely swollen and twisted. His face pale and smeared with dirt. His body was ice cold and his breathing was shallow. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors discovered he had suffered a broken leg, kidney failure and severe hypothermia. It was a miracle that he had survived. Now, looking back on this story, it's hard not to marvel at the sheer lack of judgment involved pouring gasoline into a fissure and lighting it. It's the kind of thing you might expect to see in a cautionary tale, not real life. The consequences were devastating, but in a way, these men were lucky. Brandon survived, and the rest of the group walked away with injuries that could heal. The next story is a perfect example of when inside these cave systems, you have to be very cautious, even to the last minute. It was February 1994, somewhere on a Caribbean island surrounded by warm beaches, endless blue skies and the kind of peace you only get on vacation. David Parks and his buddy Jerry were living that dream on vacation, and were full of that carefree energy. That's when they heard from locals about a deep, mysterious cave with a pool inside, the kind of thing you don't think twice about exploring when you're in paradise. They weren't experienced cavers or divers, but that didn't seem to matter to them. They grabbed snorkeling gear, a couple of diving lights, and went off chasing adventure. When they found the cave, it was more intimidating than they'd expected, a vertical shaft 70 feet straight down. But they didn't hesitate. Carefully, they climbed down, gripping the damp walls, each step taking them further into the dark unknown. At the bottom, the space opened into a chamber. In the middle of the chamber was the pool they had been told about. It looked calm, but it had that spooky stillness that comes with deep, dark water. What they didn't know was that this pool was connected to narrow underwater tunnels, passages that threaded through the cave with only small air pockets scattered along the way. But to them, this was exciting. They slipped into the water, the cold shocking their skin as they adjusted. With their lights slicing through the darkness, they swam into the first tunnel, surfacing now and then to catch their breath in the air pockets. The passages were narrow, the walls closing in uncomfortably as they made their way forward. After some time, they surfaced in a larger cavern. This new room felt massive compared to the tight spaces they had just come through. There was a small rock ledge where they could rest, and for a moment, they just sat there, catching their breath and taking it all in. But then it hit them. They were deep inside the cave, far from any easy exit. It was time to head back. David took the lead. At first, everything seemed fine as they swam through the murky water, but then things took a turn. Their movement kicked up silt from the bottom, turning the water from clear to a thick, milky mess. Visibility dropped to 0 in seconds. It was like trying to find your way through a blizzard with no landmarks. Somewhere in the chaos, David lost Jerry. He turned trying to find him, but it was useless. Worse, He lost his sense of direction entirely. The tunnels all looked the same now, and the silt made it impossible to tell which way was out. Panic started to creep in. His chest tightening as his lungs began to burn. David realized he was swimming deeper into the cave instead of out. He couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe, and the silence underwater was deafening. Just when he thought he couldn't hold his breath any longer, his hand broke the surface of an air pocket. He shot up too fast, smashing his head into a stalactite. The pain was sharp, but he barely noticed. It was overshadowed by the sheer relief of being able to breathe again. The air pocket was small, the ceiling pressing down on him like a coffin lid. He clung to a narrow rock shelf, gasping for breath, the stale air filling his lungs. He could feel the weight of the cave above him, and the silence in that pocket was crushing every second.